Hello, everybody, for All In 2025. We hope you're all having a good day. And out here, we've been dealing with a lot of storms and lightning and rain and craziness and lots of thunder for the last several days, which
Yes.
makes me think of the cosmos. And today, sorry, it's going to be a good one today. I'm telling you. We are going to talk about time and space. And I was going to put a sky planet thing up here, but I was like technologically challenged with my Zoom today. So you're just going to have to like visualize. So
Right.
Paul and I in our pre-session were talking a little bit about time management, how we fill our schedules, but also at the same time, like where do you feel the most productive when you are working on, even if it's just business planning, scheduling, sort of creating, what you need to create, or being able to have a really, good focus to get work done that you need to get done. And how easily we don't realize that, or how we don't always realize, can't talk today, Cassandra's having problems, that we have the power to change the environment we're in. We have the power to sort of go in and retool our schedule to make it work better for ourselves. But that goes back to what we've talked about in other sessions, which is know yourself, know what you need, know what helps you be better at what you do or be more productive and motivated in a good way, not in a stressful, sort of pressury kind of way, but in a way that feels authentic. So I'm going to let Paula speak to it a little bit and then I'll chime in as I always do.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that I think is so important is we all tend to have a lot of things that we do. And so, whether it's personal, professional, business, not, and the time management piece is so important in figuring it out. And I'm in a space right now where I recognize that I am doing a lot and there just aren't enough hours in the day to really commit the way I want. And so part of that means you gotta, well, not you, I have to get really clear about my schedule, have to get very clear about the time that I allocate to things. And I have to also recognize that everybody can't have my time. And so it starts with me. So, exactly what Cassandra just said is know thyself and know what you can and can't do. But then getting very clear about what your time looks like on a daily basis and then commit to it. So it's one thing to know it, but then it's the commitment. And then the environment. I always talk about most of my days, are in the office, in my office. But the reality is the space is small. It doesn't have the people. And I'm an extreme extrovert. I love people. And so I want to be around people. And so recognize that it might be time for a change, but also recognizing all the other things that I do. And so this week in particular, I was just saying how, boy, I don't know how I'm going to do all the things that I need to get done with my schedule. And for those who may not know, I also teach. And so there's a lot of things that when you're trying to get done, you just recognize, again, you can't do it all, but your space is really important and it actually impacts us both negatively and positively. And so I want to be very intentional about the space that I need to be in on whatever days that is, and making a choice to make sure that I'm good mentally, but also can do the things that I want to do and show up for the people that I need to.
Yeah, I think to your point, space being, whether you have a home office, whether you have an office you go to, because there's so many, especially entrepreneurs that are kind of solo, like Paula and I operate, where you spend a lot of time alone, kind of doing your thing. And
Mhm.
then you go out and you like implement the thing you do, right? But most of the time you're kind of sitting in your office or home or kitchen table or going to the coffee shop or whatever. And I think that it's really important to know how you work best. And if there's times where you're at home and you're like, I'm going stir crazy because I'm sitting in my office and everything I'm doing is via Zoom and everything I'm doing is, and I'm literally not getting dressed up every day. I just put on a jacket like I do in the morning when we come for these sessions. And then I go get ready for my day. Because we record these really early, just so you know.
Yeah.
So that we can fit it in our schedule and make it happen.
Exactly.
So I think that knowing that, I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday, honestly, who said that, she's been going to the library in Elgin. She lives in Elgin, was coming out for a coaching session. And she said how nice it was in this particular area of the library in Elgin, and how she was able to really focus differently than when she's at
Yep,
home. And so I would encourage you, because we were discussing that I have an opportunity to kind of get out of my house again and go have an office. And I've been needing that and I've been wanting to do that again. But sometimes it's hard to be like, oh, it's just me. So how do I justify that financially? And that's always something when I can just be home and not pay anything. And, sometimes those investments are worthwhile because it actually helps you on a mental health side, a productivity side, a motivational
yep,
side, and then your home becomes your home again.
yep,
And for some people it works beautifully to work remotely. For me, I'm somebody that needs to get the heck out of my environment and have somewhere to go.
yep.
And so really think about what it is that you need, and maybe it's not, financially viable for you to rent a space or anything like that at this point. But like my client, maybe the library has a nice room you can go to. Maybe you do well in a coffee shop. Maybe you do well, in other spaces where there's noise. Me, I need quiet when I'm working. But think about what makes you more productive, because I find even though I have a great studio office space, in my basement that's got windows and it's a walkout, so it doesn't feel like a basement. It's a wonderful space, but it's just me in my house. And even a little interface going to an office, you're going to probably run into people in the parking lot. You're going to run into people in the lobby. You're going to maybe grab a coffee. There's a different energy, and as entrepreneurs, a lot of times isolationism and that loneliness can be a real thing. So ask yourself what you need in order to be able, I don't know, to enjoy what you do and then also enjoy coming back home again. That's something that, and like I said, it works for some people to be home all the time, especially if you're going out and, having meetings outside of your house. But if a lot of your
Right.
work is in your house, uh, then it might be time to consider, maybe I need to force myself to get out a couple days a week, go somewhere else, because it'll help you at least maybe focus a little differently. You got anything to say?
Well, I'll just say this. I think, you use the example of the library, and it's a place that I have gone myself, and gotten a room to take calls if I need to. And then times when I don't have calls, I just sit out in the library, and it is a wonderful space. So there's lots of places that we can all use and go, that obviously, as I always say, we pay for. And so use them and find the space that works for you. But I challenge you this week to really think about that. Think about the space that you're in. Think about what you just said, right? What you need. Because I don't think we give enough time to that, and we just keep going and keep going and keep going. But let's pause and just kind of think about that. That's what I'm going to be doing today is thinking about my schedule and outlining it for the next few months so that I can get very clear about it. And part of that is identifying a day when I won't necessarily be at home, but I can find a space that I can work for. So come on, you all, let's really think about that and think about what you need, because it's really critical that you show up for yourself.
And it might be as simple as saying, these 2 days a month, I'm going to go spend 4 hours somewhere else, just working on my business. Or, you have a specific task or goal that you want to achieve, and you need to be somewhere where you're not
Right.
distracted by other things. And that,
Exactly.
I think that's the really important piece. And that also can give you the space and time to, as Paul is working on, to create a more intentional schedule. I do a thing with clients that I call the real schedule and the intentional schedule, which is like what's actually
Yep.
happening versus what do you want to be happening. And then how do
Yep.
you align that? But we don't always take the time to sit down with ourselves and look at the schedule and go, hmm, there's a lot of time going to this, and I don't know why, or there's a lot, or I'm not compartmentalizing, I really need to just be focusing this one day on this. And instead, we end up getting pulled in a million directions, or doom scrolling, or answering texts, So sometimes it's just a matter of learning to create that focused time in a focused place so that you're setting yourself up for whatever success looks like for you. And that way, I think if you know that you get lonely at home and unmotivated and it starts to feel like you're going upstairs, going to your refrigerator, you're throwing on the TV and Netflix and you get sucked into 2 hours of a show. Not saying I've ever done that.
Never.
I've done it. I've gone up to get my lunch. I sit down, I eat lunch, and I'm like watching a show, and then I'm like, oh, I'll watch one more episode. You've done
Yeah,
it, right?
absolutely.
Sometimes getting out of that environment can be a game changer, is all I'm saying.
All right. So you all, let's do it. Let's figure out what we need. Let's figure out the space and the time that we need to commit to ourselves. And let's make sure that whatever environment you're in, that it works for you and that it's healthy for you. And again, it doesn't have to be every day, even once a week, but let's at least commit to at least identifying one day in the next month of finding the space that you need. So come on, you all, let's do it.
All right, everyone, have a great week. Talk to you later.